Everyone seems to be asking, is Northwest Arkansas still affordable, or has it priced out the average family? Well, in today's video, my friend, we're going to cover some of the major topics that go into cost of living. Now, this isn't a cost of living comparison. This isn't a video about what the cost of living is. We're answering the question, is Northwest Arkansas still affordable? We're going to talk about the major cost that goes into that, which is housing. Of course, we're going to touch on everyday costs, and also what is the lifestyle and value balance that you get by living here in the northwest corner of the natural state. I think it's helpful for us to start on a national level, then bring it down to a state level, then bring it down to a regional level. Let's start on the national level. Is the United States still affordable for the average person to live in? Then you would say no. But let's dig into the numbers. Let's talk about that. We know that with recent news and recent administration that tariffs have placed a factor on incoming goods for construction costs, for food, exporting some crops like soybeans that are purchased internationally. According to many online sources, the housing supply is low compared to the increase in U.S. population. Basic economics says that with supply and demand, if supply is low and demand is high, the costs are going to be high. Demand is low and the supply is high, the costs are going to be low. We also know in 21 and 22, when we saw significant levels of inflation, that the cost of goods across the country has inflated so much, including housing, it didn't keep up with people's income. When your income stayed at $100,000 a year, but home prices and costs of goods went sky high, there was a delta between there, and there has to be some type of softening. There has to be some type of correction that takes place in order for it to still be affordable for people. Speaking of affordability in regards to housing, a shortage of supply of affordable living options. Now let's define affordable. Affordable is defined as inexpensive or reasonably priced. So maybe your middle income or lower income wage earners are having a hard time finding affordable housing. That said, my friend, I think we can all agree that prices across the United States have increased. Now let's bring it down to the state level. Of course, you're probably waiting for me to say that Arkansas is the #1 affordable state to live. Well, according to some sources, but let's go ahead and let's look at a broader view. According to freedomforamericans.org, Arkansas ranks number 10 as the most affordable state. Then we go down from there. North American Van Lines ranks Arkansas tied with West Virginia at 8. ConsumerAffairs.com ranks Arkansas as the 5th most affordable state. And then we get into multiple sources that say that Arkansas is the #1 affordable state to live in the United States. Of course, they're factoring different components like groceries, gas, utilities, housing, taxes, and everything across the board. What are those sources, you say? Yahoo Finance, PatriotSoftware.com, and U.S. News and World Report all rank Arkansas in 2025 as the most cost-effective state to live in the United States. Again, we're not living on a national level. We're not living on a state level. We're living on a regional level. So where we live here in Northwest Arkansas, please understand right off the front, my friends, I don't want you to think that just because Arkansas is one of the most cost-effective states to live in the United States, that Northwest Arkansas isn't expensive. It is. We live more like a mid-market city, like a Kansas City or a Nashville. It can be expensive depending on where you live in Northwest Arkansas. And of course, I'm referencing mainly to housing. But before we get into my topic about real estate, let's talk about lifestyle. Here in Northwest Arkansas, living in the natural state, you have access to state parks, lakes, rivers, streams. You can hike, bike, fish, camp. You've got free museums. You've got quality schools. Some of the best in the state are here in Northwest Arkansas. There are free concerts that you can attend. And of course, what video of mine would be complete without mentioning that here in Northwest Arkansas, there are hundreds and hundreds of miles of world-class mountain biking trails, which are free for you to use. I'm not saying it's a free hobby, believe me. My mountain bike definitely needs some maintenance right now, but the trail use, be able to run on those trails, to be able to mountain bike on those trails, and they're building more and more of them as we speak at the shooting of this video. As with many mountain biking trails that they're building, of course, they're widening the greenway. They're making connector trails from cities like Centerton and Pea Ridge and Bella Vista, Fayetteville, Rogers, Springdale, to be able to have interconnectedness if you wanted to commute to work via bike. I would recommend e-bike, especially during the summer months, just because you don't want to be all hot and sweaty going into maybe a corporate meeting. Of course, you're close to shops, food, entertainment, all different sorts of events and activities and things to do that are cost effective to help level up the lifestyle that you enjoy here in Northwest Arkansas. You don't have to be a member, you don't have to pay to go use or do many of these things. It's just there for you to enjoy. Then in turn again, raising the lifestyle value that you get by being here local. I want you guys to understand, not everything here in Northwest Arkansas is rainbows and butterflies. There are certainly issues all around town, but let's save that for another video. Now, there are items that do cost us regardless of where we live in the country, regardless of what region we live, what town we live. We're going to have everyday costs. I will say everyday costs like utility, water, gas, electrics. Sources online that I have seen in my research say that Northwest Arkansas's utilities are very similar to what we see on a national average. Of course, those utilities depend on the size of home, the efficiency of your home. Other daily costs that we see, if you want to go to maybe Forbes.com and look at their cost of living calculator, you'll see that everyday costs like a haircut, newspaper, dry cleaning, they're going to break down those costs so you can see those everyday costs that you experience, like a trip to the grocery store, what that might look like where you're from now to where you might live here in Northwest Arkansas. Bentonville to Fayetteville, very similar from one city to the other. Now, one cost that we see regardless of where we live, regardless of your lifestyle, is gas. Now, I will say, yes, there are electric charging stations, but I do believe, if I'm not mistaken, in my research, I found that Arkansas is one of the least likely places that you're going to find a charging station. So hard to find a charging station in Northwest Arkansas. Maybe you can have one installed in your home. Gas. Gas is some of the cheapest gas in the country right here in Northwest Arkansas. Let's talk about drive time. According to sources online, the average commute time for people in Northwest Arkansas is 22 minutes. Again, if you're a local and you've lived here your entire life, it might have been 10 to 15 minutes 15 to 20 years ago. Compared to folks that live in major cities like Denver, Dallas, or Los Angeles, for example, might be saying 22 minutes. I can't even get out of my neighborhood in 22 minutes, let alone get all the way to work. Other everyday costs are, of course, going out to eat. One thing that I don't know if you remember, I don't frequent McDonald's hardly at all, but do you remember the dollar menu? Back in the early 2000s, McDonald's announced the dollar menu. Then, of course, with inflation, we saw maybe the dollar menu expand to the $1, $3, and $5 menu. And then in late 2018, they went away with the whole thing altogether because they couldn't keep up with the cost of inflation and still have margin enough to be able to be a profitable business. I don't know about you, but I'm looking back to the summer of 1999. My buddy Jason and I, we had a lawn mowing business, and I remember I could get a 20-ounce Coca-Cola for 79 cents. I'm pretty sure it's 79 cents. Now they're $3. If I go down to the local gas station, $3 for a 20-ounce bottle of Coca-Cola. So if we're looking back from August of 1999 to August of 2025, that same 20-ounce bottle of Coca-Cola, same recipe, same red label on the bottle, maybe a few different design changes in there, but 79 cents to $3 now if I go down to the local convenience store and buy myself a 20-ounce bottle of Coca-Cola. That's over 5.25% inflation year over year since 1999. Whereas the U.S. inflation over that same amount of time has been averaging about 2.3% per year. So my bottle of Coca-Cola should actually only be $1.94. What's the deal? So that's to say, my friend, that there are certainly costs that we have that have inflated or appreciated, or there's a difference between those two words, in the last 25 years. So we have to look at, is Northwest Arkansas affordable in compared to what? Are we looking at affordability of housing that's increased versus food prices versus a Coca-Cola versus the dollar menu at McDonald's? A second ago, I had mentioned there's a difference between inflation versus appreciation. Appreciation is where an asset's value increases over time, whereas inflation is where your dollar doesn't buy you as much as what it used to. Say, for instance, again, late 90s, where a $100,000 income compared to where it is today, that same $100,000 income to be on the same scale would be earning $230,000 in income. Now over to appreciation. We want our homes to appreciate in value. Can they be inflated and appreciated at the same time? Absolutely. But that's a whole different economic conversation that we don't have time for today, but we do need to talk about home values and home affordability. According to the National Association of Realtors, as of August, the shooting of this video, their studies have found that median home sale price for existing homes in America as of August this year was $422,400. That's on a national level, from California to New York, Minnesota, down to South Texas. Now let's talk about Arkansas. I looked at multiple other sources online. Again, there's a difference between average and typical and median. One source said that the average sale price in the United States is $512,800, and the average sale price as of Q2 in Arkansas was $220,174, claiming that Louisiana, Oklahoma, and Mississippi are more affordable in regards to housing than it is here in Arkansas. But they did state that housing in Arkansas is notably affordable despite lower incomes, and there are homes that remain accessible due to below average values. Another source online, Raleigh Reality, said that the average home sale price in Arkansas was $207,000. So conflicting data, so that's where I'm trying to get us some consistency across the board. So we're comparing apples to apples and not apples to oranges. According to our friends over at Zillow, who have access to the syndicated MLSs all over Arkansas, say that the median home sale price for the state of Arkansas in July, so a little bit older data, was $244,250. My friends, we're talking almost $200,000 less of a median home sale price here in Arkansas versus the national average. Now, buckle up for a second. According to our recent sales stats here in Benton County, again, Northwest Arkansas is defined as Benton, Washington, and some people even loop in Madison counties for Northwest Arkansas. If you've been watching my channel, you know that that's broad. Benton County is typically more expensive than Washington County, and definitely more expensive. So Benton, Washington, and Madison County way down here as far as cost. So let's look at the most expensive county in Northwest Arkansas. As of the last month, I'm looking at single-family residential homes. I'm not looking at condos, duplexes, single-family residential homes. As of the last 30 days in Benton County, there were 1,710 homes sale, and the median sale price of those 1,710 homes was $404,450. Whoa!
Whoa, Camel! Whoa!
$404,450 to some people, that's unaffordable. Not able to purchase a home at that price. Many people are comparing interest rates still, saying interest rates are high. Compared to what? If you compare to the 50-year average, interest rates are actually fairly low. If you compare interest rates to what they were in 2020 versus to the 50-year average, yeah, you might be saying interest rates are extremely high. They're triple of what they were 5 years ago. Yeah, but if we're looking at the last 50 years, interest rates are actually fairly well priced. Depends on what we're comparing to. I'm not a lender and I'm not going to quote rates. Some people might be comparing that $400,000 price and be saying, holy cow, that's the cheapest house I've seen. Some people might be looking at that price and say, man, there's no way I can afford that. So when we're looking at affordability, we have to say compared to what? Let's dig into that affordability a moment. Still trying to answer that question, is Northwest Arkansas still affordable, or maybe people getting priced out? Let's go farther into the numbers. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, the median household income, again, we're talking household income versus individualized income. Household income, they're saying, is around $108,000 a year. Other sources that I found online say that the median household income in Northwest Arkansas is $89,000. So I'm going to use the lesser of the two numbers, but clean it off at $90,000. According to many lenders, they use the 28-36 rule. If you haven't heard of this, it's front-end ratios and back-end ratios. Again, we're going to get a little nerdy here. If your annual income is $90,000 and we take the front end of that, as a guideline, lenders say that you shouldn't be spending more than 28% on your housing, on your rent, on your mortgage, or your housing costs in comparison to your annualized income. James, let's bring up a chalkboard and do some math. Taking that $90,000 and multiplying by 28%, dividing it out by 12 months, you should be looking at $2,100 a month for housing. Again, the back-end ratio being 36%. Again, I'm not a lender, but lenders don't want you to be using more than 36% on total debt. So many of these folks that are looking to qualify, again, depending on your financial situation, maybe you've got credit card debt, maybe you've got a car loan, maybe you've got student loans, that all go into factoring whether you can afford a home or not. Let's go ahead and take our $2,100 budget and let's go buy a house. But first, let's look at an online mortgage calculator. Looking at bankrate.com. They have an online mortgage calculator. I'm not a lender. I'm not quoting rates. This was the rate that they had on their website when I opened it up to do my research. If we were to take that median home sale price here in Northwest Arkansas and plug it into their calculator, that's $404,450. Down to the next line, that's a 20% down payment would be $80,890. Now, for a second, let me break in, my friends, and say, I understand not everybody has 20% down. I understand not everybody's going to be able to qualify a loan based off of their income. So there are some liberties we have to take as we're agreeing to walk through this conversation together. Do you have to have 20% down to buy a home? No. Are there different loan programs that you can do, like a VA loan? Zero down. You can do is via zero down on a VA loan. It just means that you're financing the entire purchase, or rather the VA is financing the entire purchase. There's FHA loans, there's USDA loans, there's cash. Depending on your specific situation, maybe again, you have a lot of student loan debt or credit card debt or car loan debt and you can't afford as much house because you have that debt that's still part of your financial picture. Maybe you don't have the down payment. Maybe you have the down payment, but you don't have the credit score. So there's many factors that are leaning into here. At the end of the day, go talk to your lender, because your buddy Anthony is a real estate broker, not a lender. Still not a lender. I also went and looked at Benton County median property taxes at $266 a month. And homeowners insurance, multiple different sites quoted around $3,600 for a homeowner's policy. Let me break back in here for a second and say there are definitely homes in all of Benton County that you're not going to need a $3,600 insurance premium on that house. And the taxes could either be a lot higher or a lot lower. We're again trying to give a consistent number. Now looking back at our page, you can see cost of this house is $2,585. That's not going to work for our $2,100 budget. So let's go ahead and play around with some numbers. Let's go ahead and change the down payment in order to keep it inside of our $2,100 budget. Popping up this next screen, you can see that if we were to change down payment, you'd need close to 40% down in order to be able to afford that median home sale price of $404,000. Don't have that much down payment? Let's change another factor. On this screen, I changed the interest rate. And earlier I mentioned to you, my friend, we're probably not going to see interest rates down into the 2s, the 3s, or the 4s, maybe not even into the upper 5s for the foreseeable future. Possibly. That last one is possibly. So in order to keep the $2,100 budget that we have, we'd have to see interest rates at 3.94% in order for you to keep inside of that $2,100 a month budget. But I think we can all agree that unless something catastrophic happens, we're not going to see interest rates below 4. So what can we afford with our $2,100? Looking at this here with 20% down, 30-year fixed, 6.375 interest rate with about the same property tax, with about the same homeowner's insurance policy, we're looking at a house purchase price of $307,275. But you might be saying, Anthony, there are no houses for sale less than $300,000 in Benton County. My friend, let's do some shopping. I went and looked at home sales since the beginning of 2025. There were over 750 homes in Benton County that sold less than $300,000. These are 3-bed, 2-bath homes in Benton County. Take that 3-bedroom, 2-bath criteria off of there. There were over 1,000 homes that sold in Benton County less than $300,000. You might be saying, well, where? Out in the middle of nowhere? Well, no, actually, 86 of those were in Bella Vista, 65 of those were in Bentonville, 43 in Centerton, 87 in Pea Ridge, 101 in Rogers, 228 of those, again, 3-bed, 2-bath homes, were in Siloam Springs. But then again, you might be saying, well, Anthony, I don't want to live in those towns. I want to live over here. I want to live this close. Well, there has to be some give and take, my friend. If you're working in Bentonville and you're looking for a $300,000 house, there were 65 of them that sold since the beginning of the year. Are they the most desirable? Are they the most updated? Do they have that extra feature that you're looking for on this side of town, that side of town, in this neighborhood? Probably not. There has to be some give and take. Obviously, with more homes in Siloam Springs that are available, but Siloam Springs, if you're working in Bentonville and living in Siloam Springs, that's a 40-minute drive all day, every day. And at rush hour, that might be more than an hour for you to get from Siloam Springs to downtown Bentonville. Again, I don't know where you're working, but I'm telling you, it is possible to find affordable houses in Northwest Arkansas. Now, hear me loud and clear, my friends. I understand that not everybody has 20% down payment. Not everybody has a household income of $108,000. Maybe you're a single person and you're a teacher and you teach at Bentonville schools, but the only house you can afford is down in Silo Springs. So you might have to drive all the way into Bentonville every day. Maybe your spouse doesn't earn an income and they stay home with the kids. I understand there's multiple different caveats in specific situations, but when we're talking about affordability, you're going to have to go further out. So the folks that say that the average person is getting priced out, the short answer is also yes, they're getting priced out of downtown. And on the other end, there are people that can afford to live downtown Bentonville, but don't want to afford that. They want to be farther out. They don't want to be downtown and have to try to fight for parking and traffic all the time. At the end of the day, there has to be some give and take. Is it affordable to live in NWA? The other way to answer that question is with another question. Well, it depends. What do you think's affordable? My friend, it's always a pleasure to put this information together for you, and now you know a little bit more about what life is like in and around Bentonville. Thanks for watching.